Thank you. Thank you. Ah. Shay will be joining us from on the road, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Ooh.
Well, spring is here.
Yeah, it's feeling like it right now.
The
A little
birds,
bit.
the birds are saying, "Tweety tweet tweet."
The sun is out. I
Heat is
heard,
on.
right? I heard heard my first wood frog chirping the other day.
I heard them last night.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, signs of spring.
Oh, and Shay just texted me. So, let's see here. Where is that? No. Let's see. Ooh, I'm trying to read people's backgrounds to see where you are. Donna, are you in Massachusetts? Yep. Nice. Looks green and blue out your window, so maybe spring made it down. Well, it usually makes it down there faster. Peter, are you at home?
I'm in New York.
Are you in France? New York, okay.
There
France.
are,
Hi,
uh,
Shay.
Hi.
the magnolias and the tulips and everything is in bloom here. It's
Oh, wow.
totally spring.
Well, the crocuses are just about up here.
Our snow pile's almost
Just
gone.
peeking through. Yep. Let's see.
There's Sue. Sue, are you on island or are you on off island? You're definitely on mute.
I hate that. I'm in Cambridge.
Oh, lovely. With the magnolia blossoms and tulips.
Yeah, it's gorgeous down here for a month, and then in 2nd of May we come to Maine and we get to do it all over again.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Great time of year.
Yes. Janet, Peter, I see, and Chloe, you're in the room. Hello.
Mhm.
Shay's, are you at home?
No, I'm on the mainland. There was no 10 o'clock boat today, and I was on muscle delivery duty. So I am working at my parents' house while I wait for the next boat.
What happened to the boat?
I
I'm just
think it's
waiting for
just a,
somebody to zoom in at some point from the ferry.
yeah.
You never
I
know.
think it's a Coast Guard inspection.
Yeah.
I just, for the notes, I see Janet and Peter online, and I saw Chloe. Is there anybody else in the room in person, just so I can record it for the notes?
Nope, just us.
Okay.
It's the 9th already?
Shay,
Yeah.
I'm online too.
Yep, I've
Did you?
got you.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, April 9th.
Hmm.
All right. It is 10:30 to, I think we've got a quorum. I didn't hear from anybody that they couldn't make it, so hopefully more people will trickle in. But we can go ahead and get started and maybe just check in with the folks in the room if there's people who walk in. If I don't hear them, I just want to make sure I get it captured for the notes at the end. The first thing we have to do is approve the minutes from our last meeting of February 13th.
So moved.
Second.
Peter, Donna, any discussion? All those in favor?
I,
I,
Excellent. Let me just put that down. Okay. And then I can focus on the discussion. So Narrows project update, there has been a fair amount of movement in potential funding sources since we met in February that kind of may change the kind of recommendations and trajectory for how projects move forward. FEMA BRIC has reopened. There's some hurdles that we need to clear to be eligible to do that. And probably Shri and Janet are the best ones to kind of talk through how, if that's something, if those hurdles are something that we can climb ahead of the deadline. But I think basically, the short summary, and then I'll turn it over to Shri to talk details and likelihood is, if we were able to be successful in receiving BRIC, then we may want um, to just tweak the way that we apply for the main infrastructure adaptation fund project so that they could work together to fund the final long-term engineering and also the final long-term construction. Now, of course, there's lots of questions about if we don't get that, making sure that we could still do something on the short term, but that's kind of at a high level, a change that we were not anticipating when we met last. Um, Shri, are you okay if I turn it over to you for the rest of the details?
Yes, I'm your gal for details. However, I'm going to do my best not to overwhelm you with them and show you my screen so we can start with something familiar. Remember the which way chart of if this, then that, and then if that, then this? Excuse me. Jeez, can you see my screen?
yeah,
Mhm.
That has a funding decision timeline on it? It's the right
Yep.
one? Okay, great. So we made some decisions based on FEMA not being available, and then it became available. So the good news is that it's the same funding decision tree, and now we can complete the timeline because now that we know the FEMA BRIC application is due June 18th to MEMA, who will then submit it to FEMA July 23rd. And the main infrastructure adaptation fund grant is due May 11th. So, I mean, that's the good news. The federal funding's back on the table.
Yay.
Exactly. Ah, ah.
For how long?
Well, until June, like until July 20. Yeah, I don't know.
You're right. Never
Yeah,
mind.
I'm trying to keep my humor with this craziness. What else you got? Are you able to see the short-term adaptation middle and South Narrows
Mhm.
on my screen
Yep.
now? Okay, great. So we're in April, where we expected to have to pause versus proceed once we knew information that we expected we would know, but didn't know when we shared this with you. So we're we're more or less on track and have all the details we know what we have to do to make this happen. What we need from you, the community, is really a decision on how to both move forward with the long-term funding and address short-term, or if you want to address short-term, and we can talk about that timeline in a minute, and actually, let's just stop there. Yeah. I'm going to stop my screen. My share. So, to go full speed ahead with the full funding request, at this point, I'm using the $7 million ballpark. And we do have the updated information from GZA, but it hasn't updated my memory banks yet. The request to the feds would be 75% of that, and the non-federal match would be something we could apply to the state for, and that would cover some of the design on this end, meaning before the award, if it's awarded, on the federal side. And full construction funds. So the main infrastructure adaptation fund state grant is due before the federal grant. So I would be writing the grant side by side with the same budget. And the timeline is a critical factor for eligibility. So the timeline has to be really clear with the narrative in the federal application for just in the federal application. If the committee in the town decides to go forward with short-term projects at the Middle and South Narrows, it is feasible to apply for main infrastructure adaptation funds for scoping, design, and construction. However, just to think that through, if funds are awarded for the state from the state to pay for short-term design, scoping, and construction at Middle and South Narrows, and I'm lumping them together for the sake of this timeline, and they get constructed, let's say at the end of this year, and the federal funding is awarded, then they would need to be ripped out the next year for the long term to be installed. And there's still a 5% cash match requirement from the town for the main infrastructure adaptation fund.
So is that like 10% of the $7 million or something? 5%?
I think, well, with it's with the long term 7 million, federal covering 75%, and the state covering 25% minus 5%, so 20%. The town cash cost would be 87,000 something.
Okay.
That does not include construction for short term.
Right.
So it would essentially eat up all cash capital reserves and would feasibly only be installed for 1 year before having it be removed. So everybody and their mother is texting me right now. So I'm
Time for
stop that. Driving personal, do not disturb. Oh, God. I'm starting to really appreciate analog. Oh, the days. So if I could make it really clear, I would like your blessing to just move forward on the long term and not integrate short term fixes for south and middle, or limit short term fixes to the middle narrows if that is needed. I had a Janet and I were wrestling some federal portals yesterday. Oh, hey, Nancy. And in the process, got to talk about the cost for the short-term middle narrows. It may be less expensive to pay for the road to be fixed at $25,000 than to have a short-term erosion control essentially fix at the middle narrows. Sue?
How likely is it that we're gonna get the 7 million or minus 25, whatever it is?
Right. Well, so there are scoring criteria, and it's just a matter of meeting the points or not. And
Really? That's it? I mean, if you meet the criteria, you get it?
you rank, well, yeah, I made that sound really simple, didn't I? It the eligibility, I'm sharing my screen. Can you see it? I'm sure you can't read it,
Yeah,
but can you see it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are 6 categories and potential total points. The first section is you either get 5, 15, or 30 points. And we're at 60% design, so we will only get 15 points. Unless there's a real gamble and risk for trying to, pay GZA out of pocket to get to 90% design by July. I don't know if that's even possible, but that's, something to factor in if you wanted to do that. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying, everything out on the table. So I believe you have received BRIC before for the hazard mitigation plan update. And so I don't think that you would get the 15 points for number 2. Number 3 is all around building code adoption, and the town does not have any building codes. So that is probably a 0 score. Unfortunately, the town does not qualify as a small impoverished community. And the census data even report on the skewing of the data because of the kind of extreme affluence, and then the median, and everybody else. So that will probably not be awarded. So unfortunately, the points, you're not going to be able to get like the 80, you're not going to be able to rank high. I can do everything possible to get you the full points that are available. Sufficiency of the responses, I think we could probably get 20%. I mean, the 20 points under 5 in risk reduction, and the implementation measures, will work to get the full points. So that would probably 20, 30 might be a score of 45, and I can talk to Mima around the topic 2, new applicant or sub-applicant. So do any of you know if the BRIC funding received for the hazard mitigation plan was a federal competition? Because if it was not, then you could get the 15 points.
What, just trying to think about what the BRIC funding was. We received funding from FEMA for damages for the storms, but to pay for the BRIC grant, you mean? Or to pay for the hazardous mitigation plan?
It's what paid for the hazard mitigation plan that Alcina completed.
That was sent to FEMA. So
Yeah.
there's a good chance that will be completed by the deadline.
I can go find that file and see, because we haven't paid her anything yet, so, and that was a couple of years ago, but I will find that.
I can look in my files just to get that quick answer. But I mean, so these are the kinds of things that we'll have to figure out as we gear up for the application. So there we have very strong support at the state level. And my job was to find out about the building codes yesterday and then kind of report back to Mima for next steps. So I haven't done that yet.
So the bottom line, Shay, is for a best estimate is that we have it's somewhat uncertain whether we will be competitive at getting the long-term grant.
You said Shay, right?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Shri.
I did say three.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have no way of evaluating all of the different uncertainties in terms of the scoring, but I'm just curious. Bottom line,
I would say at this point it's somewhat uncertain, but I think it's the best chance. And the process of applying is to get more and more certainty the further you go. And I haven't been able to get into the portal yet to see what else is there. That's why Janet and I were meeting to wrestle the portal.
okay, one more question. If we were to go ahead with the short-term solution, knowing that if we were successful in getting the longer-term grant, they would have to tear out what they did already to build the longer term. That's what I understood you to say. So is there a possibility we'll know about the long-term grant success before we actually finish the construction on the short term, or before we even start the construction?
Yeah, I like where you're going with that, and it's true that once, say you find out that we apply for everything,
Yeah.
and you find out we got funding for everything.
Yeah.
Excuse me. In a timeline, Main Infrastructure Adaptation Fund will probably come back within a month or maybe 2 and say you got the funds or not. They're so fast, it's kind of shocking. Federal government, it could be a full year before we know if the funding's awarded. So it's feasible to get the engineering done for the short term, and before constructing to check with appropriations to see if it has gone into appropriations by, I don't know, let's say at the 6-month mark, to make a decision about whether to actually go through with short term or to hold off because the long term is looking feasible. That is one scenario.
And what
Again,
is,
timing's uncertain.
just remind us, how much is the construction estimate for the short term and what's the town match?
Well, 100,000 for the South Narrows engineering. Janet is managing this middle short term, and Janet, did you hear back from Gartley and Dorsky yet?
No, I'm gonna call them.
So that, let's just say it's 10,000, and that would be for design only. So let's just say it's 120,000. Construction of the GeoBrug would be at least 100,000 because you're gonna get because of the geotechnical borings. Oh God, do you have to do a barge? I don't know that answer. So let's see, that would be, let's just say 225,000. That would be 5% of that plus, hold on.
$11,000 something.
Plus the 87,500. So that would be about 100,000 cash match. So it looks like it's feasible with your reserve funds. If those back of the envelope estimates hold, we're still waiting for the Gartley and Dorsky estimate, and like right around the time we got the scope of work proposal for 100% design and bid docs from GZA, we decided not to go forward with it. So I didn't read it in detail to see if there was a construction estimate. Did any of you read it in detail? Nancy
No.
and Sue, I'm looking at you. We can always count on you for reading in details. No, okay.
Sheree, just because I feel like some of those numbers were kind of muttered under your breath, so I just want to make sure I'm trying to capture the assumptions there. But the
Fair.
short term would be around $100,000 cash match, and what I have figuring like $110,000 for engineering, south and middle. But what were you figuring as estimate for construction for the south and middle?
I muttered 225,000 combined construction and design. That's the number I used for my on the fly under pressure back of the envelope napkin estimate. If
Oh.
that is true, then the cash match would be around 100,000
Okay.
at 5%.
Oh.
That does not include the no.
How is 5%?
Yeah,
Right.
5% would be $1 million.
It's the 5% of the 25%. Which I know I need to actually find out what that is so I can stop saying that.
Okay. The point I was trying to make, which I think we'd all like to know, is if we go ahead with the short-term project, because the longer-term project is still have uncertainty attached to it, what is the town's exposure in total on the short-term project? Because if it's not much money, why wouldn't we do that? And if it's a lot of money, then it might behoove us just to wait to find out about the longer term grant, right?
If you're looking at me, I was trying to do math and wasn't able to.
I don't
Capture
think
that.
we have to have an answer today, but I think what would be helpful is if we knew on the short-term project what the maximum amount of the town's exposure might be, both design and construction, and then we could evaluate whether it was behooved us to either spend that or to, without knowing the outcome of the longer term grant, or wait to find out about the longer term grant and pass on the shorter term.
So, I hear that. I just want to put a pin in it and respond to the 5%. 25% of 7 million is 1,750,000. That is for the full long-term construction what the town would have to pay 5% of. So that number is 87,500.
Okay.
For the main infrastructure adaptation fund, which is what we're proposing or considering applying to for the short-term funds, it would be 5% of the total main infrastructure adaptation fund grant request. So if we're requesting 87, we're requesting the project cost in the main infrastructure adaptation fund application is 1,750,000 for the long-term narrows. Then the town has to pay that 5% for 87,500. If we add in the main infrastructure adaptation fund the short-term design and construction, which I estimated at 225,000.
225,000.
Yes. I'm not sure. Yes, that's what I meant. Whatever I said, that's what I meant. Then it'd have to be 5% of that.
Well, that's like $15,000.
Right, plus the 87,500. So that's where I was getting the approximate 100,000 cash match.
Okay. Short term and long term? The 87 for long term or?
Yeah, the 87 will be fine for some long term and then the additional.
Be clear,
50 for the short terms are exposure. Is that correct?
here,
The short-
you don't
Yeah.
have to spend the
87 for the long term.
we don't have to spend the 87,000 for the long term until we know we've got the grant.
That's where, by the way, this is an extremely complicated proposal for your grant writer that you are coming up with, and I can only do so much. So the 5% match may diminish. So the main infrastructure adaptation fund is a reimbursement grant only, meaning you're going to be paying out of pocket or out of bond or whatever you have to do to come up with the full cash to pay for the services for, if we ask for $456,000, I'm sorry, we're at $1 million. We're asked for $1.8 million, then you're going to have to come up with all of that money to then get reimbursed for. That is guaranteed once the reimbursement process is such that your grant reporter sends in all the invoices and copies of the checks, and then if they say they're going to give it to you, they're going to give it to you. So it's just a matter of, I don't think that's as big of a challenge.
That's
If
the short
within-
term.
If
Short, main infrastructure.
if within that time period the town decides not to expend the money on the short term, then you won't get reimbursed for it, right? I mean, that makes sense, which means your cash match expenditure reduces. So you're not beholden to spend all the money that you're awarded.
I thought I had a moment of clarity, and I don't know if that moment of clarity may have passed, but um, is a simpler way for you and us for moving forward is to apply for both the Infrastructure Adaptation Fund and FEMA BRIC for the construction and planning for the long term. Just to be simple for
Yes.
the application. And then if we would have time, if we do not receive the FEMA BRIC grant, the amount that we request from Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund would be far larger than what we would need to accomplish the short-term fix. So we may be able to go back and renegotiate with the state to say we don't need 1.8 million because we're not successful in receiving the federal funds, but could we adjust our scope of work to for $225,000 to cover a short-term fix?
Exactly.
My blood pressure just went down when you said that, which tells me that sounds like a really good idea. I can make that case. That's pretty cut and dry. It's like we're fully committed to addressing the hazard, and we have a long-term plan that's dependent on federal funding. If we don't get federal funding, we have a short-term plan. We still need funding. By the way, for federal funding, all of the material that is submitted needs to have the word climate removed from it and the word adaptation removed from it. And all of the hazards need to be described as coming from weather events and wave energy and high winds and storm frequency. And so that's going to take some extra time.
Ugh.
There,
Sheree,
yes.
Sheree,
Yes.
before you apply for the FEMA, didn't you say you have to, or we have to have from GZA is it 100% or did you say 90% of their plan to go forward?
We can go forward with the 60% design in hand and we'll get 15 points on the application.
You get more points if you were.
We would get more points if they were at 90%. That would require the town paying them out of pocket and giving them a full speed ahead directive without really any community feedback or integration. It's just like, make this happen by, ideally June 18th.
How many more points could that potentially get us on the rubric though, if we had 90%?
15. It's a big jump and it makes you a lot more eligible.
And how much would it be for to pay for the engineering out of pocket?
Around $100,000.
And is that
part of it is
potentially
reimbursable
through the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund, or do they not do retroactive reimbursement?
I don't think that would be reimbursable from the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. There's something called the BCA, which is a benefit cost analysis that factors in a lot of data. Part of it is building codes and gets the applicant, the town of Islesboro, or sub-applicant in this case, town of Islesboro, because MEMA's the one applying to FEMA, a score. Um, it requires engineering opinions, assistance, and all of the cost to the town for the engineers to do that in advance is reimbursable through BRIC, through the federal funding, not Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. However, MEMA has hired a team of engineers to assist with the benefit cost analysis, and I have started communicating the data with her team. And I communicated to GZA that we will not need them to do the full entire BCA because I compiled some of that data, put it into their spreadsheet, sent it to MEMA, and so I just let them know that their cost estimate should be smaller. Yeah, well, I'm happy you're happy. I'm a little concerned about asking GZA to put these proposals and scopes together and then saying, actually, we don't want to do that. And so at least, I mean, they're people too.
Yeah.
And you can only do that so many times before there's fallout. So I just want to, for the record,
Yeah.
advise that for consideration among the other factors.
Yeah, I mean, to me, well, I had a conversation with Sri about a week ago, and when GZA shared an estimate of $75,000 for engineering for the short-term fix for the South Narrows, where I was just pretty frustrated with every estimate feels unexpectedly high. And so I think they are doing a good job, but I think I understand it would make us a lot more competitive with FEMA brick, but I am concerned about drawing down over half of our funds to fast track a project. I know often they have taken longer than original estimates require, and if we're trying to fast track something and we may not be able to make the deadline, it just my personal vote. I guess I'm not ready necessarily for a vote, but I'm leaning towards a more conservative approach to be able to use grant funding to cover their engineering services because it just feels like it's unexpected costs as we find out we need to ask additional questions. And I don't want to pull the trigger too quickly on drawing down our funds. That's taken us a long time to build.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, the downside to delaying this is we run more risk of losing the use of the road in light of some terrible storm or something, right?
For a couple hours, possibly,
Yes.
in the short term.
We're no worse off than we are right now.
I keep thinking that if we have this condition that's gonna close the Narrows, it's also gonna close Life Flight and the ferry. And we're already gonna have an ambulance up on the North Island, so if there's a critical medical condition, admittedly, there's something to be gained by getting the person to the health center. But that's, I think, all we're gonna be gaining.
Yeah. And it leaves.
For those few hours that the road is actually closed. And we've closed it, what, once in 15 years? Twice in 15 years? I don't know, I'm not sure. But I worry about spending money on the short-term fix, if we don't have to.
I totally agree, Peter, with what you just said.
I just put the cost estimate from GZA to get to. Sorry, keep going. I don't want to interrupt this.
You're
Nancy,
muttering
go
again.
ahead.
I would like to solve this problem for as long as we can. I think kicking the can down the road isn't going to be a very successful solution to this problem. I don't expect it to be the solution for 100 years. Our plan, our best plan is not for 100 years because there's no bridge, but that's, I can get over that. But I just delaying what has to be done is an unfair burden for the future. And there are going to be so many other unfair burdens for the future as we kick that can. It would be really nice to have this one taken care of and see if we can somehow maybe be a little riskier than we thought we should be for that result.
So what does that mean?
Yeah. You're
I'm saying don't do the short term, go for the brick. Or go for both of them and see what happens. See what the fallout is and then work from there.
Well, and I think we can go for both. I think it's important to go for both, and if we can go for both with the long-term solution, I think going to Shri, what your original question or what you needed from us today, from a big picture perspective, was blessing to focus on the long term and to set the short term aside for the immediate. And it seems like there is support from that from the past couple of comments. And it seems as though there may be opportunity to renegotiate with Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund if we
all
do
right.
not receive FEMA brick.
So is that a motion, Shay? Can we make a motion for that, to do that?
Ought we not first discuss something about GGA and their engineering costs and encouraging them to move faster? Because they're costing us money all the time. By their delaying, could have been in a different position than we are now.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're the ones who said, they had the scope of work for the long term, for the 60 to 100% right after they delivered the last one. And we said, well, if we think we can get grant funding for it, we'd want to wait and get grant funding rather than spend down the capital reserves that we have. So, I think the 60% was delayed a bit, but right now we are probably the hold up.
We're probably what?
The hold up.
Oh, okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And to be fair to you, when you made that decision, the federal funding was not on the table.
Right.
So it's a lot of information and change coming at everybody all at once.
So I guess the question is, I mean, does it make sense to spend the $100,000 of our capital reserves? Do you think that there is
Any way they could make that work?
right, or do you think it's just spending money to get a little bit faster and be down $100,000 of match?
If we
I mean,
can get
I think
15
that's worth a
points.
phone call. If you're really willing to say, we'll sign that contract and that scope today, or whatever. I'm pointing at the wrong one, but it's on my other screen. We need you to guarantee 90% design by the time this federal grant is due. And if they say yes, that is going to, I would say, I don't know about significantly, but it's going to make a real difference in the eligibility to get the funding for long term. And I think, Nancy, that's what you meant, a little bit of risk for the long term sustainability. I'm not sure I can use that word. I think we can use resilience. That word is still allowable, and it's certainly true. So
Yeah. I tend to agree with Nancy. If you're able to talk to GZA and they can make a pretty firm commitment to getting that design, 90% design, I think it's worth it for our chances of potentially getting that long-term project covered.
I agree.
Yep.
I'll make that. Oh, I could make that phone call today if this goes the way it looks like it's going. Once you make a motion and vote and approve.
I would support that, but I wonder if you could ask them. I know going back to your their people, and we don't want to push them too far, but it would be really nice if the last 10% was done after Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund was in hand and was a really expensive 10%.
It would be.
Yeah.
The deadline for the MEAF. Can I say MEAF now and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
MEAF 26. Because we had a MEAF 24 that's closed and gone. This is MEAF 26. The deadline is May 11th. If they give us the award June 11th, that gives GZA a month for the final 10%. It's possible. It's everything's squeezed right now. All the funds are due now. Between now
They
and
don't
June.
make the decision May 11th. The applications simply have to be in.
Right, but I'm saying if a really quick turnaround to say you're awarded is 1 month. They've been really quick.
Okay.
And there were some delays, and I have to remember which fund this is, because they're getting the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund and the Working Waterfront Adaptation Fund through the state were funded by NOAA from the federal government. Who have extra steps that take longer to get a yes or a no or a maybe. Which is to say it could take 2 months and there's no guarantee that the award will be in hand before June 18th, which is the deadline to MEMA. There's some wiggle room between June 18th and July 23rd because MEMA, Maine Emergency Management Agency, is the actual one applying to FEMA, and all the towns are sub-applicants. I'm trying to say this with a straight face because I know how insane I'm just reading craziness to you, but these are I'm trying to answer your question. Am I getting lost in the details? I'm sorry. I know it's a lot.
Yeah, no, my only comment was I thought that our estimate from GZA was for 100% design, and what we're talking, and I think that was $100,000, and what we are talking about is getting to 90% design would give us that additional 15 points. So
I understand. I'm sorry. I was thinking 80 to 90. The last 10% of that, but I now see what you're saying. So they really only, yeah, I can ask. What we need from them to move forward, as I understand it, is they need to commit to 90% design. They're going to have to give it to us before the 18th because I have to look at it and do things to it before I can actually submit it.
Yeah.
And once I get into the portal, I'll know what I have to do to it.
And can we send them chocolate? Would that help? Flowers?
I do know they appreciate flowers. One of them was having a hard day last time I talked to them, and somebody in their office gave them flowers, and they were on the desk, so that, so that's a yes. I don't know about providing home addresses. I don't know about that. So
Does anybody who hasn't weighed in want to weigh in on the concept of Shri asking GZA nicely to see if they could get it to us by the 18th, before the 18th?
I think it sounds great.
Sounds like a good idea.
GSA is a smaller firm, and we're giving them other work from the town of Islesboro.
GZA is not a small firm.
What?
GZA is not a small firm.
No.
This is a branch office, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Donna, do you have anything you want to weigh in on?
I was just wondering, am I muted? No.
No, you're good.
So if Shri talks with them and they, whatever their answer is, then is the motion already that it would go forward, or would we have to get back together again and discuss it? Especially if they say, no, we're not going to be able to do that. And the other question, I just wondered what is the additional, they're at 60 now, and what are they going to give us that brings us to 90 that is worth $100,000? I don't know. Again, I don't know the whole engineering thing, but that's 30% for $100,000. And I don't know what that includes.
Yeah, they gave us I think in the February meeting, there was a link to their proposal that kind of outlines the full scope of the services that gets us to 100%, not to 90%. I think it closed. I think it closed, the gap. So basically, we would be completely ready for putting the project, getting bid documents and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But I think what I heard you say or ask is, because I don't think there's been a formal motion on the floor, is, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but if GZA says yes, we can meet the deadline. I'm comfortable with us making a motion today saying if GZA can meet the deadline, we move forward without meeting again. If they cannot meet and we spend the capital reserves, if they cannot meet the deadline, then we wait to apply for the main infrastructure adaptation fund to fund their work.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it gives us a much better chance on the brick grant. That's what we're spending the money for, right?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I shared in the chat the two cost estimates. One's for the 100% design and one is for the short-term South Narrows design. And you'll notice in there that both include a limited topo survey and subsurface exploration. So I think they they need to do geotechnical borings for both. And so that would be the most time consuming. And they would need to have that. I think they are scheduled 2 weeks out, maybe 3 weeks out, just to get the geotechnical borings, and then the engineers would need that data for the final to get to the 90%. So anyway, if you look in the chat, or some of you can't see it, you can see the breakdown of what that 97,500 it gets you. And I blew up my screen here. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so the topo survey and subsurface exploration would have to get scheduled ASAP to do the design. So it's possible that would only be 45,000. So we don't need the bid documents for 90%. Coordination and meetings, I think in order for them to move very quickly, there needs to be really minimal meetings on their end. So that would essentially be, you'd be giving up the opportunity for more feedback and integration.
And this tree, I just want to make sure this is the 60 to 100% for the long-term design.
That's right.
Okay. Does anybody want to feel comfortable making that motion?
So
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Everybody in the room was supportive? Is that, I can only see
Yes,
okay.
the two of us.
Perfect.
Go Shri.
Does that give you what you need, Shri?
Could you read the motion back to me?
What I have drafted was empower Shri to ask GZA if they could meet the June deadline for 90% design to become more competitive for brick. If they can meet that, we spend the money now. If they don't, we hold off until we know we receive the main infrastructure adaptation fund grant before proceeding with the 60 to 100% design.
Okay, I will do that, and I will ask them if they'll honor the existing proposal, because the cost estimate's only good for 30 days, and we've gone by that. We'll hope that stays. And I will let Shay know once I have that conversation what the results are.
Yay!
I mean, it feels exciting though. I mean, it's in the scope of decision trees, it feels like we're starting to like branch down a branch, and I'm sure it'll fork again before we know it. But
okay, sounds good. I haven't.
Know, Shri,
Yes.
whether any of the geotechnical, geotextile fabric has to come through the Straits of Hormuz.
I have another meeting that I have to go to, and I'll try to open the Straits of Hormuz like on the way and get back to you on that.
I'll send you Peter to go get it.
Once I get the application in, I'll put that on my list.
Oh, it's not. It's not at all.
Thank you, Shri.
Thanks, Shri.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank
one more
you.
thing. Can somebody help Janet share her screen in a meeting later today so that Mima can help get into this portal? Because I need access to the portal.
I'll talk
Let
to
you all
Tina.
discuss that. I have to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Great. Thank you.
Janet, do you need help with? Well,
Nope, I'll get Tina.
Okay, great. So just the last couple things. I know we're at time, but just an update. We Right now there is $20,000. So it was cut down a little bit for capital projects to go in that's currently proposed in the FY27 budget. That was the only update I had. I don't know if anybody else has any questions or if there's any other business that people want to bring up now.
I have a question.
Yep.
The amount that's going to be needed for this project, is that go into the budget that's coming up now with the town vote and all that, or is it have to go into a different time or
So
different
the
month?
Yeah, so we've just been slowly putting away $20,000 or $30,000 a year into a capital reserve account. Right now there's around $180,000 in that account. And the vote that we just took would reduce that by $100,000 if GZA can meet that deadline. So we would have right around the $87,000 that Shri estimated we would need for cash match potentially. But that is the only money that is set aside. So if there were to be additional funds that were required, it would be either in an FY28 fiscal year or it would be in a special town meeting vote.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or business? All right. If we were to keep a meeting schedule that we haven't been able to keep in several months, but the second Thursday of the month would be a 4:30 meeting on May 14th. Are folks okay with that as our target?
Sure.
Yep.
For folks in the room, could you write on the calendar 4:30 sea level rise if it's empty
Yeah.
so that we can secure our spot?
Yeah.
Is that 4:30?
4:30 on May 14th.
$4:30.
Yep. Perfect.
All right.
All right. With that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Make a motion.
Second.
All right. Yay. It's nice to see you all.
See you all.
Bye.
I'll update you as soon as I hear from Shri what she hears from GZA.
Great. Happy spring, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Shay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Shay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.